Hi guys, I wanted to do just a general overall video on Charlotte Mason and what Charlotte Mason is all about. So it's such a big question. What is Charlotte Mason about? That it's really sort of hard to think about where to begin with it. So I think Charlotte Mason was a woman who lived about 100 years ago during the Victorian, during the same time as Queen Victoria, the same time as Charles Dickens was one of her contemporaries. And she found this method of education. She talks about in her books that she found that education was just dull and dry and it wasn't really life-giving for children, and she felt that it could be so much more, that education is something that she said that education is a science of relations. All education is self-education. Education is an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. These are some of the things that she said about education as she began to develop a theory of education. And all of these are just really wonderful things that she has put down in her books as ways that we can help and bring the best out in our children and in ourselves, and to live this really full and beautiful life. So I think that maybe the biggest thing that I would think of when I think of Charlotte Mason is that she cares more about what's inside of the human being than what's on the outside. I think a lot of times in our normal day-to-day life, we care about, like, on paper, what do the achievements look like, what can a child do on the outside, but there's not as much care going on for what is the character of this person. Who is this person on the inside? Do they care? Yes, they might have an awesome score. They might have 100% on their math test, but do they care about mathematics? Do they care about how God has designed and ordained and created the world? Do they care about how things fit together in a mathematical way? It's this idea of, well, are you reading a book because you want to figure out what the plot is and how what are the different characters? Or are you reading a book because you want to have a mind-to-mind connection with the author of that book? And so that's the difference between an academic education and what Charlotte Mason would have us call education, which is an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. It's a science of relations. It's this beautiful, life-giving, it's an all-encompassing way to live, really, and is what she would have us see education as. And as you start opening your eyes more and more to this, it's just so exciting. I, as a mom and teaching my children, become so excited about copy work and living books and the beauty of all of these things that I'd maybe never cared about before. Literature and science and poetry. And I used to hate poetry. And then through Charlotte Mason, you begin to enjoy and love and discover all of these wonderful, beautiful things that God has for us to enjoy. So I think maybe the first thing I would say is I would like to unpack just a little bit what she means by an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. And obviously you could probably talk for hours and hours and hours about what it means, what she means by having an atmosphere, discipline, a life. So I'm going to just try and compress it into like a really short summary just for this video. By an atmosphere, what she's talking about is not just the environment, not just the pictures that we hang on the wall or the furniture that we choose, which also is part of the atmosphere that we create. But you know, when you talk about atmosphere, you think, is there an atmosphere of tension? You hear the phrase, you could cut the tension with a knife, that there's this palpable atmosphere that you can feel when you're around someone else. You can feel how that person's emotions and their energy, and that's what she's talking about. She's talking about all the things that are welling up from the inside of us that come out. This creates an atmosphere of joy, or an atmosphere of grief, and an atmosphere of tension. So we create within our homes, we create this atmosphere, and we can choose to a large degree what kind of atmosphere we create. Are we so involved and wrapped up in the tale of the Wizard of Oz, and we can't wait to find out what happens to the witch? Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen to Dorothy? She's trapped. Or is it like boring? And a lot of us have experienced that in school. We maybe are reading these amazing classic stories that have captured the minds of people for centuries and centuries, and we're sitting there in a classroom bored because we're dissecting it, and we're not listening to it to actually find out what is it that this person is trying to say about life and the condition, human condition. We're just figuring out, well, where is the climax in the story? And what Charlotte would want us to do is just have this life-giving atmosphere where there's joy, where there's excitement, where our attention is focused on what we're learning. And that's, in a nutshell, what she's talking about when she talks about atmosphere. So education is an atmosphere. It's this feeling that we create. It's this environment that we create around it's just in the air. It's palpable. We breathe it in. The second one, she says, education is an atmosphere, and then she says it's a discipline. A discipline does, and so often we just pair the word of discipline with punishment, and which is something that she completely divorces in her books. She says discipline is not a punishment. Discipline comes from the word discipleship. Discipline means to learn. Discipline is something that becomes enjoyable, and this is something that she talks about quite a bit in her books, is the idea of habit training. We habit train ourselves, we habit train our children, and this becomes a joy. It's a reward in and of itself when we see that we're producing these wonderful results. We can help she talks about the habit of attention, for example, and we can train a baby. She talks about, the little girl will flip from this thing to that thing to the other thing, and then the mother helps her to keep her attention on. She's outside running around, and her mother sees that she's looking at a daisy, and the mother takes time to say, look at this daisy. Did you know what this daisy is? This is a day's eye. And then she tells her this whole story about the daisy, where she keeps her eye open all day to look at the sun going all back and forth, and then at night the day's eye shuts up, and she goes to sleep, and then in the morning again she opens up her eye. That's why she's called a day's eye. And so now the girl has this delight in this daisy, and she's focusing her attention, and the mother has done this intentionally to help the daughter to build this habit of attention. And probably the daughter is going to focus on this daisy and take some interest and be engaged and get the good out of what she could get out of this daisy. So this is one habit, but it's the idea of creating this joyful discipleship of seeing work done well and appreciating and being happy and feeling good and accomplished in that. So we start with, in copy work, maybe it's the discipline of of not quitting, of finishing, the discipline of finishing. So the discipline of perfect execution of our work. So we start with just drawing a circle, and pretty soon we add a straight line, and then all of a sudden we're drawing letters, and we just progress, and it's doing this day after day after day, and then seeing, oh, look at all this beautiful work that you've done, and pretty soon we can make these beautiful poems and write down and do all this, have a commonplace journal where we're writing all these beautiful things that we can keep and pass down to our children and use to inspire other people and help to edify ourselves. And it's just starting with simple little things and growing in this habits and the discipline. So education is a discipline, and finally education is a life. Education is us just having this full life, full of ideas, just like Jesus came to give us this full life. He came to give us life and give it to us abundantly. And I think that's what Charlotte Mason is talking about in education is a life. It's not just one thing. It's not that you graduate and then you're done. It's not something that you know, it seems so often in school that education is something that we want to be done with. We're, okay, I'm finally done. I finally don't have to listen to all these teachers babble on over and over again for hours, and I finally can just do what I want to do. But education, all education is self-education. All education is us going and finding things and discovering and having joy and awe over, oh my goodness, have you seen what the underside of this leaf looks like? And have you seen what this bee is doing? I've never watched an ant build. One of the things that I haven't done yet is I want to have my own little ant farm and see if I can keep an ant farm for an entire year. Oh my goodness, and I would never have thought of this would be something that I would desire to do, is have all these insects in the house all the time. So if you've been a Charlotte Mason mom for quite a few years, you probably get the insect thing, like, oh my word, I'm picking up cicadas and I'm looking at the patterns in their wings. Who is this person? What has Charlotte done to me? But education is a life. It's this beautiful, where we find wonder every day in the things that God has created. We find, well, we build relationships with each other and with other people. We go outside of ourselves. We find joy in serving others and in helping others, in doing handicrafts. There, in being this, what Charlotte Mason would call magnanimous, is this idea of having a little bit. We have just a wide feast of all of the different things that are available to us. We know how to crochet and how to ride a bike and how to do Swedish drill and dance and how to play an instrument. And we have all of these things that we just, this full life of wonderful, good, beautiful things, full of truth and beauty that we have to enjoy. And this is what Charlotte is all about. And so that would be what Charlotte calls it, an atmosphere of discipline in life. And I've talked a little bit about Charlotte saying that education, all education is self-education. It's, you know, what we cannot teach, we cannot force. You can bring a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. And what she says in her books is that we don't even bring the horse to the water. We're just giving them dry dust and these textbooks. And that's another one of the things that she talks about is living books. And I follow someone on Instagram. I highly recommend that you follow I'm gonna pronounce it wrong. Sorry. But it's Charlotte Mason Poetry on Instagram, so follow them. And he talked about a living book, and it's just so wonderfully put that a living book is something that imprints an image on your mind, and that you keep that as your own possession then for the rest of your life. And the ideas that you get, that you go out and you seek, and when you have this, children have this appetite, and all human beings, we have this appetite to learn, and we want more and more and more and more, and until we're satiated. And a lot of times we feed that with things that are, you know, not great, like television. And I know, like, we feed ourselves sometimes with those things, but we have this we want that mind food, and children, they want this mind food. They want to get their hands on the grass. They want to dig in the dirt. They want to squish their toes in mud. I read an article once that squishing your toes in mud activates the same part of your brain that helps you to learn calculus. So yeah, let those kids go play in the mud. But they want to see, they want to know, what is this, they want to see seeds growing, and they want to see things in the garden, and they want to see how they want to climb trees and touch sand and dig in the dirt. And And we as adults, we want that too. We get interested and we just, oh, what is this all about? And I want to find out, and I'm interested and I want to know. And that's letting education be self-education, because what children go and they find out on their own, what we as adults, what we do as self-education, what we find out on our own, we keep those things for ourselves forever. And she says to use living books, and these are books that just engage our thought processes. We are as human beings, we love stories. Jesus always taught in parables, so we love to hear stories, and that is what Charlotte Mason. Give them literature, give them stories, give them pictures and images in their minds, and that is a wonderful way. Give them original works, let them read the original documents when you're teaching history. Let them read the original works. Don't give them the abridged books. Don't give them Heidi, the original book, The Secret Garden. All of these, just, oh my goodness, these books that are so, the Water Babies, they're so full of wonderful, beautiful words, and the way that the pictures are expressed. And I'm going to just be honest with you, there are some books like The Pilgrim's Progress. It took me 3 times before I started getting that book, but once you start seeing the images and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so cool, this is so interesting, this is just so, and it's worth reading Shakespeare. It's worth reading Pilgrim's Progress 3 times to understand why this book has been around for centuries and centuries and is still one of those books that everybody goes back to. Like Little Women quotes Pilgrim's Progress. So many books that you read and you'll start making all of these connections, and your children will start making all of these connections, and it just becomes so exciting and so engaging, and learning is all of a sudden they're like, oh Mom, didn't we read that over here, and didn't this happen over here? And they will start making connections that will blow your mind. You'll be like, whoa, 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 oh my word, I didn't even think of that. And it's exciting. It's life-giving. That's why she calls education a life, because we have these wonderful disciplines and habits that we build of reading amazing, wonderful books and practicing doing these amazing, wonderful things, and it just builds on itself, and it grows, and it makes it fun, interesting, exciting. So this video, I think I might, I think that maybe, hopefully I'm just hoping that this has blessed you. I think I need to, I get really excited talking about Charlotte Mason and her philosophy of education, and I hope this has blessed you, and I hope that if you are interested or you're just barely starting Charlotte Mason, I really hope that you can start to read she has 6 volumes. Also, there's many resources. Look up Karen Andriola. She's written some wonderful books. The Charlotte Mason Companion, that is a really great book to start with, and there's lots of wonderful YouTube videos and resources out there, and so I hope, don't get overwhelmed. Just do one small little thing at a time, and pretty soon it will just, you will grow so much from your experience, from your searching in Charlotte Mason, just as so many mothers that I've talked to, so many moms that I've met and have. It's a wonderful journey. So I hope this blesses you, and I hope to see you in the next one.